Welcome to the third season and the fourth episode of our Liberland in Georgia podcast. My name is Samuela Davidova. I'm the Liberland representative to Georgia and I'm also the press secretary for the Globe. This is my passport, by the way. It's real, that's me. And my today guest is Pavol Lupták. It's been already for the second time since the beginning of the podcast. This is actually how we started shooting the podcast more than a year ago, back then with Franklin Club. Now we are shooting thanks to our Memorandum of Understanding with Girchi Freedom. That's a Georgian libertarian party. And one of our aim for the Memorandum of Understanding between Liberland and Girchi Freedom is to bring more attention to Georgia from my perspective of what we can do as Liberland. And I would love to introduce to Westerners, to English-speaking people, Georgia as a country, Georgia as a potential for business making, investment, and to see it from a different perspective, because of course a lot of people have different perceptions on how it works in Georgia, how is it like to live here, work here, and or just to travel here. And I'm super happy to have Pavol with me today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Because Pavol has been in Georgia for how many times? 4 times?
I have no idea, but I have been traveling or visiting Georgia almost every year.
Wow.
And so I can compare the differences. And I think it's improving.
Oh, okay, that was short. Yeah, this is super cool. In the last podcast episode, we were talking more about how you see it as super capitalistic heaven, that it's a low-taxed country. Georgia is one of the economically freest countries in the world. You can hear more about it if you just search for Liberland in Georgia, so go ahead. But today I would love to bring more attention to your global perception, because you're a perpetual traveler and you call yourself a global opportunist. You even bought a domain opportunist.global. And what does global opportunism mean to you?
The goal is just to provocate a bit people, and it basically means that opportunism usually has pretty negative connotation for most people. Global opportunist is like a person who is basically using like a global benefits, basically from any country, for his own purpose, in order to have like a cheap, meaningful and happy life. That's all.
This is super cool. I think that people do not like the opportunism perspective because it requires you to take responsibility for your life and to actually stop blaming everyone around and your surrounding, and to actually opt into what you want to live, right? I guess that you faced a lot of hate for this, so that like you dare to choose yourself and you tell others to do so, and I'm happy that there are thousands of people who are following your way. You help them to get a Paraguayan residency or to remotely get a Georgian bank account, actually, which is super cool. And what in the current settings of the world, what would you say are some of the best ways how to use the benefits that the world provides?
I think firstly it is necessary to realize that when you live at one place, usually never in one country you will find all best providers for your personal or a company needs. So I think that's why we are helping basically people to decentralize their different aspects of life to different countries, because I think for example, we are a citizen of the European Union, but European Union, it's probably a good country to have citizenship and to have a European passport, but otherwise having a tax residency or permanent residency in the European Union, it's not so good idea, because it's basically tax hell with a lot of regulation and very high taxes, very high taxation, especially for example in Slovakia. At the same time, we don't have the best the banking system. I think the Georgian banks are better. So, for example, I completely switched from European banks to the Bank of Georgia, if I can just say it. And of course, so what I want to tell is that I think when you analyze the whole world from the global perspective, you can choose the best country for your tax residency or for residency, the best country for a bank account. For example, in Slovakia, almost no bank is willing to open me the bank account, despite the fact that I'm a citizen of Slovakia, but I don't have residence in Slovakia, so they're not willing to open it. Georgian banks have absolutely no problem with that, for example. Also, when you are like a citizen or resident of European Union, basically you have to pay a lot of you have a lot of a mandatory obligation. You have to pay, for example, healthcare insurance, social insurance, and so on. And of course, if you have residence in Paraguay, Panama, Uruguay, and you basically you are not employed in this country, you don't need to pay anything, which is also really good. So basically, I think I'm voluntarist, and I think that all relationships in the world should be mutually voluntary, and we should pay just for services and product really use. So basically, I'm just helping people to opt out of the system, not to pay for something they don't want, especially when coercion is used, for example, and just pay for services and products that they really want and they really want to use. So yeah, it's global opportunism. Global opportunism is basically practical implementation of flag theory.
Very nice thought. Okay, thank you for sharing. You traveled more than 100 countries in the world. How do you see the current narrative and where the world goes? Because it seems that the West gets more oppressive, more regulated, more taxed. But recently you've been also to Argentina, where was a newly elected president, which is more into the direction of low regulated policies. How do you see this from the global perspective? And then you may share your perspective to Argentina.
One interesting thing when a man travels a lot and visits a lot of countries, basically you realize that for example, you can imagine a lot of regulation or laws, for example, in the European Union, and most countries they don't have this regulation. So I would say that even maybe 90% of regulation or laws are completely useless because there are so many different countries where they don't have any such regulation. Nobody needs this regulation. There is no demand for this regulation. A typical example is, for example, Uruguay. Uruguay is the country that has never ever banned prohibited drugs.
Mm-hmm. And is it safe there?
And just because they not that drugs for legal for personal possession or all drugs are legal, but also there is a legalization of LGBT marriages, for example, legalization of abortions, legalization of prostitution, legalization of everything, and just the fact that they legalized everything what is possible to legalize. There is a really low crime because there is nothing for what they should arrest and arrest people and put them to jails. So this is quite interesting. So basically you have a country where almost everything is legalized. They don't have problem with the drugs, for example San Francisco, or California, or the countries where the drugs are really really illegal, and everything works. So especially when I travel a lot, I realize that many countries, they don't have any laws we consider to be super important. A typical example is, for example, as I told, in European Union countries, or a Western world, you have a mandatory healthcare insurance. So it basically means in Slovakia, it's a 15% from your physical income as a physical person. So you need to pay 50% from any income as a physical person to an oligopoly of 3 healthcare insurance companies in Slovakia, and you have no choice. Just if you live there, if you have income, you need to pay a 15% just to healthcare insurance.
That's more of a tax.
Yeah, it's crazy. And another 25%, up to 25% from income tax from cryptocurrency. So that's when you just count it together, it's almost 40% just for total taxation when you want to sell cryptocurrencies as a physical person. But what I want to tell is that most people cannot imagine how the world would look like without like a mandatory healthcare insurance. And we can just look, for example, to Germany. And in Germany, if you're like a wealthy person, so for example, if you're enough rich, you have enough monthly income, you don't need to pay any healthcare insurance. Because healthcare insurance is basically just for poor people. Any insurance is just for poor people. If you have enough money, you don't need any insurance, including like healthcare insurance. And also, like in Paraguay and many Asian countries, they don't have any mandatory healthcare insurance. And if they want to be insured, they can pay it. But nobody forces these people to pay it. Another interesting example is, for example, mandatory, obligatory car insurance. All European countries will have mandatory, like obligatory car insurance, and without this insurance, everything would imagine that there will be like a collapse, on these roads. But nothing like that. In Paraguay, for example, they don't have mandatory like a car insurance.
You're just in Georgia. It's the same here.
Yeah. So just people and I think it's even more social, like more fair, because if you are poor, you don't have money to pay this insurance. You don't pay it, and if you're rich, and you are just afraid about your car that you will be hit by some poor people, you just pay it extra, So it's even more social, because just like rich people who care about their car, they pay this extra insurance, and of course always if there is some accident, there is like a need, or these people they want to make some agreement and just make some reimbursement, so it worked without problem. Yeah. So basically, what I want to tell you, in Europe, for example, we have a lot of mandatory rules or laws, regulations, and it seems like in many countries they don't have them, and everything works. So basically, in Europe, what we can say is very apparent rent seeking. Rent seeking basically means that thanks to some specific regulation or specific law, some specific companies, like insurance companies, like health insurance company, they have guaranteed business from the government, because they have a lot of customers. Like these 3 healthcare insurance companies we have in Slovakia, they don't need to compete about the customers, because every resident of Slovakia has to be their customer. There is no other option. There is no possibility to opt out if you have residence in Slovakia. So and when you have no competition, when you don't need to compete about your customer, if your customer cannot leave, that's very, very crucial. Your customers cannot leave. When your customers cannot leave, there is no need to improve, incentives. There are no incentives to improve your services, at the same time lower your price. So basically, that's why in Europe we have expensive healthcare insurance and low quality insurance. And even you have so for example, if something bad happens to you, you get some disease, you are not sure that the healthcare insurance you have to pay, that they will cover your disease. You are not sure at all.
How does it look like in the hospitals? That's your favorite topic in Slovakia, for example. And how does it work? Let's say I have a problem with some teeth. I need to go to the dentist. And because I already pay, let's say, some of those $200 a month, or how much is it, so that I expect that it will be covered by the dentist. So I go to a public service, right?
Yeah, so like dentists, especially like a dental industry in Slovakia, is private ones. So basically, it's not so regulated like a public hospital.
So it's not covered.
Almost not covered. I think the healthcare insurance can contribute to a really small amount of money, but basically most people they pay almost 100%. And that's why it works better than the other parts of public healthcare. Okay,
because I remember my friend in Czechia, he had a problem with his tooth, and his doctor, his dentist, she told him to come in a month because she doesn't have any free spots.
That's exactly. So basically, I would like to say one important information. When you have these a mandatory healthcare insurance, for example, in Slovakia or the Czech Republic, every medical doctor, every hospital, every medical service provider has some agreements, some quotes signed with this healthcare insurance. What does it mean? It means, for example, that for example, your medical doctor can make like 10 röntgens for the patients of this of the healthcare for the patients of the healthcare insurance number 1, and like 15 röntgen for the patients of the healthcare insurance of patient of healthcare insurance number 2. So basically, you have some quotes and quotas.
Quota.
You have some quotas. You have basically some quotas. So basically, it means that when you want to go like for medical inspection, medical examination, and you call to your medical doctor, the first question he will ask, okay, so tell me what is your like healthcare insurance? So basically, you say them, I'm insured in the company number 1. So he just opened like some Excel style sheet or some like a document, and he can see, okay, so like this slot, this weak slot and the big slot is completely filled for like full for the patients of the healthcare insurance number 1. So second month is also full, third month is also full. Okay, so can you come like 4 months, for example? And what I do, I call to your medical doctor, to the same medical doctor, and when he asks me the same question, like what is your like a healthcare insurance company, I will tell him I don't have healthcare insurance company. I will pay by cash. And then his second question is, can you come tomorrow?
Yeah.
And that's exactly, so what is quite interesting like about our customer who basically cancel their like a permanent residency in the Czech Republic and Slovakia, and they got residency, for example, in Paraguay, that from one day healthcare system started to work, which is like a pretty funny. So you cannot be like a resident if you want to have like a fully functional like a healthcare system.
That's crazy. You associated this to me with how it worked in Argentina, where it used to be all public, all free healthcare, and people were waiting for an appointment for a year, and they got so tired from it, so that this was one of the biggest motivations to vote for the current president, right?
Depends on the operation, but yes, basically in Argentina, you have like a healthcare, public healthcare system which is completely for free, and then you have like a healthcare system when you get into the queue. So this is Argentina is probably the only country in the world where like a healthcare system is free, not only for Argentinian citizens but basically for all citizens of the world. But that's exactly one of the things that Milei, the current Argentinian president, he wants to change it. So basically, he wants to introduce extra fees, extra payments for foreigners. So, for example, now like a lot of poor Paraguayans who cannot afford like a private hospital, for example, in Paraguay, they just go to Argentina for some like operation. But of course, they have to wait. So it's not like a
You can die meanwhile.
So basically, like a healthcare system in the world, you can choose basically in super available healthcare system like in the US, which is pretty expensive, and the European model, like for example, UK healthcare system, which is for free for all UK citizens, but you have to wait like a month.
For stitches. I know those memes where in the UK you go to the doctor. It was like 3 countries in Europe. You go for the stitches, and they tell you like, okay, sure, come in 3 months. In the UK,
just to remove the stitches.
Yeah. In the UK, it's like 1 month, and I don't remember. Like,
but fortunately, there are like countries like Thailand, Turkey, maybe even now Georgia, where these like health tourism is becoming more and more popular, and more
That's
people
true.
like used to visit these countries. So like I have like really nice experience with the Bangkok hospitals, where basically it was not possible to schedule my date because they told me you can come anytime, so you don't need you don't need to call us at all. So I cannot imagine something like that in European Union, but yeah. So the thing is that more regulated, you have some industry by the government. It doesn't matter if it is healthcare system, but any industry, more expensive and more bureaucratical, the given industry is.
I think it kind of makes sense, so that like you have to pay those bureaucrats in the middle, and it all, instead of going from A to B, you go through a whole complex system, and it's just an extra paperwork that doesn't really create any value. And my personal observation, maybe you have a different perception because I have never been to the Americas, is that the more bureaucratic word you have, the more bureaucratic country you have, the less trust you have between people. And people hand over their responsibility to the government. So you can see in Europe, like in France, in Germany, it's the weekend, totally peaceful street, and people are waiting on the red light because it would be dangerous if I passed. And in Vietnam, you don't have even those lights, and you have a huge traffic. But everyone is using their better judgment. So people are more used to introspect and really looking around, and also do more like agreements based on trust between people and based on relationships. Even here, it's actually the same. So you have more trust in the society. And I don't sign contracts with people. I sign memorandum of understanding with the governmental party here, right? But it was more in a way of like a process, and like, okay, we took a photo. But the reality is that like if you want to make a business, if you want to interact with other people, it's more on the trust and relationship based. And then like these governmental structures and bigger structures are not interfering with your life. And for example, I had an incident here with my scooter. Once I haven't noticed it, and I stopped too late, and I hit the car from the back. What happened? We went around the corner. We checked how the car looks like. I was sorry. The guy called his friend. He didn't show him like photo or something, but he called his friend who's like repairing cars. He said, it will cost I don't know how many Georgian lari. I said, okay, I will transfer you the money, fine. And he offered me to invite me for an ice cream, okay? It was all resolved within minutes. And then I just called to my service to come, pick it up, and repair it. That's it. And the thing is that it was more human than to wait for an insurance agent, filling out the papers, waiting for the police, blaming the other, like, look at how terrible it is, and creating more drama where it's not. And I prefer exactly these regions where people remain human and where it's more trust-based. To me, Caucasus is for sure like one of these regions. It's really not that regulated, and you see that even if it was, so people like really are more stick together. You feel this contact when you walk the streets. And another region to me like this is exactly this like Southeastern Asia, like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. And I can see that people rely on themselves and on their better judgment rather than on some other structure which is sort of like bigger than they are. This government, corporates, and so on.
Yeah, definitely. Like high trust communities, like tribes, for example, like Georgia for me is like a big tribe, basically. So high trust communities are more efficient, and like less bureaucracy and like basically like better working. But I wanted to mention like a last thing about this like healthcare system in Europe.
Okay.
Especially in Slovakia, but it's quite similar in any European country. For example, in Slovakia, many people complain that, like we have this oligopoly of three like private healthcare insurance companies, and they have like a huge profits, and they are taking this profit, and it's not moral. I don't know, something like that, But nobody wants just to say, hey, let's stop forcing people to be their customers. Let's not to be their customer. Like allow all people in Europe, all people in Slovakia to be the customer of any global health insurance? Why they are forcing by the government to use some local health insurance company in the given like a country? And this exactly. So basically, they are complaining that these like oligopoly of these like healthcare insurance company, they have like a huge profit, but nobody's just saying just stop it. Don't force people to pay for it because it's forced. It's forced. Everybody, like a lot of people contact me every day, for example, that I don't pay or I didn't pay. I have some depth of healthcare insurance in Czech Republic, for example, and now I have like some execution or something like that. So people are really like crazy. Yeah. So the thing is just make the thing voluntary. Let people to just decide what they want.
You reminded me of how it works here. So like, let's compare. I'm sick. I live in Czechia. I need to go to my doctor, who needs to officially write me down some super simple, let's say painkiller, and he needs to write it down on the paper. And with that paper, I go to a pharmacy. I put it there. I put my ID with which I identify that it's really me and that I can buy it. I was allowed to buy it. And then I am given away the medicament. Here, you are sick and you don't want to visit many places, right? Which totally makes sense if you have a fever, for example, or your friend will bring you the medicaments. What they do? They go to the pharmacy. They say, hey, my friend, she has high fever. They might call you and they just give you what you need. Why? Because it's human. And you don't have here, I can see that you have here medicaments from all around the world, and some things from Turkey, some things from Russia, Ukraine, Poland, I cannot even name it. Like I can see that every time I have just the package, I'm not really buying many medicaments, but I can see that on the package it's like just every time different language, and I'm just like, I don't speak Portuguese, like what should I do? But it's brilliant. So like here it's exactly working like this, and it's exactly like people are using their better judgment. Like, okay, possibly you can buy here something harmful to you, and you know there are not like drug addicts in the street. Why like on medicaments, like it's not regulated by the law, because why the hell would you do it? Like I think that from the psychological perspective, there's really this it's like a child that wants to revolt, so they're like it's prohibited, so you want it much more, which doesn't make sense. But okay, let's go back to this like free healthcare in Argentina, as you mentioned. And you also mentioned to me when we were talking that Milei, one of the things that he did, he introduced a prohibition to say about some service that is free.
Exactly. So basically, he banned to the government officials to say publicly that something is for free. For example, education, like Argentina educational healthcare system is for free, because nothing is for free. These rhetorics, like these words are basically still used by European politicians, vote us and something will be for free. It's not true, basically. So to be sincere, this is my favorite ban. I'm normally I'm against all ban, but I just can't accept I like this ban.
What would you say, how is the narrative when it comes to Argentina to the people over there, and what changed? Because you were there during the elections, and some changes came right after.
Like a society before, even now, it's really highly polarized. So basically, socialists are still really powerful. Milei is quite radical. So, for example, now he's closing this public state television broadcasting, some medias basically, just one of the source of the socialistic propaganda. And of course, a lot of people, they don't like it. Then he, for example, did quite interesting, I would say, bizarre things. For example, in Argentina and also in Uruguay, there is a pretty strong woke movement. So, for example, normally in Spanish language you have two genders, but in Argentinian Spanish and also Uruguayan Spanish, they introduced a third gender, they in English basically. And what Milei did, he banned using like a third gender, firstly in Argentinian like army. So basically, you cannot say like a they to your colleague in the army.
Okay.
And the second thing, he basically banned using like a third gender in all government agencies.
Okay.
And of course, like many people being socialists, they used to say, okay, like how it's like a libertarian, and basically he's enforcing a lot of bans, you know, like. But he considers or he thinks that like this, it's basically like these are values of like a woke movement, and basically he thinks or he supposes that he needs to like block it or like ban it in some way.
I think
For example, for me, I don't care. For example, I wouldn't introduce such ban. For me, it's stupid. But yeah.
Yeah, it's more like to keep people busy about talking about these things. But do you see certain things that really had an impact already in the positive way, and maybe some countries could learn from it?
Yeah, definitely. I think the hyperinflation is like slowed down now, so it's not so bad like it was. Even like the government budget, I think for the first time during last year is in the positive numbers. So like he basically cut really a lot of expenses of the government. He canceled like a lot of ministries, or basically some people argue that instead of canceling these ministries, they basically put like two ministries, for example, or two government agencies just to one. He basically like joined like two government agencies to one. So, but finally, he's like he's trying to save money because that's exactly what Argentina needs these days.
Nice. Okay, well, I know that you're not a very politician person, like you're more on the apolitical way. But do you see some other great examples, like, or how do you see Georgia along the years? And is there something that here in the country potentially it would just go upper if it learned something from some other country? And where?
One thing I have noticed and I really appreciate it is that basically Georgia is going this hyper Bitcoinization. So for example, there are so many Bitcoin ATM machines here. I visited so many different supermarkets where it's possible by pay by Bitcoin, by crypto. And it's so surprised because Georgia is still perceived like a developing country for like all Europeans, but we don't have it in the EU. We don't have it. We don't have these progressive technologies thanks to the stupid regulation, like a crypto regulation, like a MiCA, for example, which basically this regulation completely killing like a crypto companies and crypto services, and this regulation introduced a lot of like a surveillance of crypto transaction and crypto users. So I especially appreciate that Georgia as a country was able to embrace Bitcoin and the crypto technology, and it's super cool. There are a lot of Bitcoin startups. There are like crypto exchanges here. There is like a 0% tax, like capital gain tax on crypto. So I really appreciate. And the big surprise for me in Georgia, in the streets, you can find these like terminals, like a payment terminals, where basically you can pay for anything you want. My friend told me that in this terminal you can even pay for server housing. I cannot imagine something like that in the center of Prague, for example, either like a payment machine that you can pay basically for anything, even like for server housing. So it's just because there is no like a regulation. People are not afraid to experiment, to introduce like a new application or to launch new application. And new services. So also it seems like a taxi business here is like a pretty deregulated. So that's why the prices of taxi or Uber or Yandex.Go, which is like a Russian version, they're like really cheap. And just because like it's not so regulated, for example, in the Europe, you know. So I paid for 20 or 25 minutes of drive 5 lari, which is like less than €2.
Yeah.
It's $2 basically.
Okay, and would you say something that Georgia, compared to some other countries, which would you say? I mean, there are not really many freer countries in the world, from my perception, but there might be certain nuances in some. What would you see? Like, is there something that you see that if Georgia would implement it, it would like be super better?
Like there are many cool things about Georgia. I think okay. Better.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
It's not easy. Okay,
yeah.
It's not easy. Okay, so I really appreciate like territorial taxation here. But for example, to get the residency, you need to like physically stay here. You need to have like a functional company. You have to have some local income just to be like a tax resident. So maybe it would be like if this process would be like a more easy to get the tax residency, for example, like in Paraguay, I think a lot of people would change their residencies to Georgia. So basically, but still, Georgia is the only country where you can stay using your tourist visa for like 365 days, which is super cool. There is no such country.
Yes.
So I think like Georgia is super open to like a foreigner and tourist. So you can basically live here permanently without need of like residency.
Indeed.
Which is like a really super cool. And so this is like a one thing, like just be competitive to like a country like Panama or Paraguay, so that like getting the tax residency can be like a more easy process, for example.
I would say to defend this, like it's a super good point, but at the same time, like you can still like open an LLC remotely here, and everything can be done online, and you don't have to be here to have a company here. But indeed, like to be perceived as a tax resident, they want you to be here and spend money here. I mean, I think it makes sense.
Yeah. And another thing is that if you have like a Georgian company, you still need to pay at least 1% of taxes. So like there is like a big difference when your company pays 0% taxes and 1% taxes.
Yeah.
And the difference is not like this 1%, the difference is bureaucracy, because all companies that have to pay some taxes, like even 1%, they have to do like keep accounting, pay accountant, and all of these things. So it's not like the problem is not 1%. 1% is super cool, super nice tech, but the problem is like a bureaucracy with the given company. And I think it can be so basically it would be fine if local companies, when they do business out of Georgia, if they can have like a 0% taxation and no bureaucracy. Like typical example are like companies in Gibraltar, for example, in Panama, and many other countries which have like a territorial taxation. So basically, if you do business, if you have like a Gibraltar company or Panamanian company, you do business out of the country, you don't need to pay any taxes. You don't need to. Usually, you don't need to even like keep your accounting, something like that. So this would be better. So you can still pay 1% or even more when you do business inside of Georgia, like to Georgian companies. But now, just to be more competitive, it would be fine if it is 0 and no duties, if you do business strictly out of the... So in this situation, people will stop using like the countries I mentioned for companies, like a Gibraltar or like even the U.S. companies, for example. In U.S., if you do business, if you own the U.S. business as a non-U.S. citizen and you do business out of the U.S. as a Paraguayan resident, for example, tax resident, you don't need to pay any taxes. So from my perspective, as a global opportunist, I would be happy to use like a Georgian companies instead of like U.S. companies, for example, or Gibraltarian companies. But they need to like decrease this 1% to 0% and just remove this bureaucracy. So
it would be actually a really good PR. I was thinking about what's the benefit for the country. And for sure, it's a great PR so that people learn much more about how it works over there and may consider to relocate as well.
But still, even now, like doing business with Georgian company is more easy and better than using any European company.
That's right.
Yeah. So like, but we are not like, of course, like everything in Georgia from this capitalistic perspective is better than in EU. That's of course. But when I'm just trying to compare with some other like countries.
I actually would add on so that like if you're starting your own business as the entrepreneur, so I don't remember to what exact amount it is. I was counting it at something like average salary in Georgia times 12 months. That's approximately to the amount until when you don't have to pay tax. So like when you start a business and you're not sure yet if you will be profitable or not, so you actually sign up for this, it's micro business status. You cannot have employees, but you pay 0% tax. That's very interesting. So that's why like actually locals have this opportunity to be an entrepreneur and to pay 0%.
And the limit, like a
I don't remember how much exactly it is. I think it was something around 8,000 euros.
In Paraguay, it's like a $10,000. So basically, if you have Paraguayan company or you are like a Paraguayan physical person and you do business, up to $10,000, you basically don't need to pay any income tax, and above you have to pay like 10%.
Yeah, that's super nice.
So, yeah.
Good.
So it's a definitely good idea, especially for like a small entrepreneurs.
For sure. I mean, like it's this ease of doing business is exactly in this. So that like I remember when I was opening a freelance license just in Czechia, I was so confused. You don't understand anything. You need an accountant and you haven't started yet and you already have some fixed fees. You have to submit some bureaucracy. And I was constantly just walking every day and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I for sure make something illegal. And I was so scared to actually do anything.
There is like a really big advantage of Georgian companies, I would like to mention, compared to like, for example, Panamanian companies. And it's the fact that Georgia signed double tax treaty agreement with all European Union countries, which basically means if you issued your invoice from a Georgian company to any, like a Czech Republic, Slovakia, any European country, all these countries, all companies in these countries, they can use it as a official expense, and then they don't need to pay these like withholding taxes. That's super cool. Like this, because if, for example, Panama signed it with the Czech Republic, Spain, the Netherlands, but not from Slovakia with the Slovakia. So you cannot use like a Panamanian company in territorial taxation country to do business, for example, with the Slovak companies, because there is a threat of these like withholding taxes, which can be like up to 35%. So this is interesting. So you can basically issue invoices from our Georgian companies to all European customers, and they have to be completely fine with that.
Now, when you mentioned that, so you can actually open a Liberland LLC, and but because of this missing double tax treaty, so you might pay, you might have this withholding tax. But I mean, this is the only drawback. But it's possible if you want to open a Liberland LLC, please text me to press@liberland.org. I will forward it to my colleagues.
but still, I think there are like a lot of countries which do not enforce this withholding tax, and in this situation, they can easily receive like invoices from Liberland companies. So it's definitely possible.
Wow, we're creating some structure here.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for today. I'm super happy to have you. I hope that we will meet here in another year and it will be just another new perception. And I'm glad that you enjoyed Georgia. And see you around. Thank you so much for watching. Please, if there are some interesting topics you would love to know about, let me know. I'm preparing now for you an interview also with one local gentleman who would tell you more about the investment opportunities here and how you can benefit from Georgia, even remotely, and from a new, different perspective than what I presented you in the previous episodes. So stay tuned, please follow me, comment, and let me know how are you. If you need help with something, text me, email me, add me on LinkedIn, whatever. There are some great things happening now in Georgia. After tomorrow, we have a networking breakfast with Pavol. I started these gatherings in English here as well, so the community is building now. And yeah, I'll see you around if you want to come or not, or you just want to watch and you want to find out how it works here. Just feel free to let me know. And thank you. Cheers. Have a nice day.